Red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light.
Well, as we Scots love to do, grab yourself a drink and pull up a chair because it is another episode of the Soul Sessions. Of course, with always your host, it is I, Soul. But with me today, this is the man who knows all about anarchy, at its finest, some will say. But of course, he is Ryan Kennedy, the CEO of Northern Championship Wrestling. Welcome, Ryan.
Good evening. How are we going? See how I managed to kick that off? I stumbled straight out the gate.
Hey, we stumble all the time, my friend, but we get back up. I mean, I was fully expecting to vet in a budget and have the mic drop down like I'm introducing you like Mr. Kennedy back in the WWE. I could, but budgetary restraints, they're one of my fortes. I like to keep it chill. You know, I don't have all that money to fork out, like WrestleMania tickets being a couple of grand. I'm on budget. I need to restrict myself. That's the main way to go. But of course, Ryan, as we do with every guest on the Soul Sessions, every guest has a story. Every story has a beginning. Ryan, how did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
So I was born, this is where I show my age. I was born in 1990, so came up with the Attitude into the Aggression era. And that was like sitting up Friday nights watching Raw with my dad as a kid. You know, being 8 or 9 and seeing the Attitude era kind of opened your eyes a bit as a kid. I think it made you a little bit tougher as an adult as well to some of the stuff you've seen through the Attitude era. But yeah, that was like kind of my first big like love for wrestling, and saw a couple of indie shows as well. And I was like 8 and 9. Like one of the ones I recall, couldn't tell you what the promotion was, couldn't even tell who else on the show, but it was at like Johnston Town Hall, and Earthquake was headlining. So that was like, that must have been like 97, 9 around then. But yeah, that's just like a core memory of seeing. Because also I saw Earthquake on WWF, and then seeing them in Johnston was like, oh my God. And then my first big experience was when the WWF came to Earl's Court in London for Insurrection. And we had like serious nosebleed seats. And I was saying to Billy as well that regardless of what side you're on, if you've ever been to an Old Firm game, you kind of, you know what the atmosphere is like. But when The Rock came out, I've never heard anything like it. Like the whole building felt like it shook. And that is just something like from being a kid, I'll never forget experiencing that. Like hearing that If You Smell live was just unreal.
Oh, the aura that Mr. Dwayne The Rock Johnson can gather, whether it's Moana or in the professional wrestling environment. Yeah. He can gather that reaction from all ages. But obviously the Attitude Era, it's a very important time for a lot of wrestling fans. Monday Night War, the business at the top with Austin and Rock. But we're now seeing a lot of layers pulled back, obviously with WWE's new Vault channel, where they're pulling back the curtains and showing a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. So I want to know, Ryan, as a fan, is there anything you would love to see from the Attitude Era that obviously didn't play in front of the camera, maybe was recorded backstage, that could be on the Vault channel? Any kind of secrets or mystery you would love to see?
I feel like for me as a wrestling fan, like I was speaking to someone about this the other day, that the difference in how it is now to back then, like when you saw Taker on TV, you saw Kane, it was The Undertaker. But now, because of the age of like social media, you've got so much access to everybody, it's almost impossible for somebody to kind of always be that character. So always kind of not so much takes the magic away, but it's kind of like lifting the curtain a little bit. And like growing up with the Attitude Era and not having that access, like I remember having to go on dial-up to go on the WWF website just to look at some pictures and like the worst, slowest quality videos you could. But it's like that kind of, I feel like the kayfabe kind of aspect of it is kind of losing. But then I saw like an interview with Triple H where he was saying, you know, we don't shy away from that now. Like everybody knows what a face is, everybody knows what a heel is, and using those words kind of almost involves the audience a little bit more. But there's then that counter argument of, is it kind of lost a little bit of the magic now? Because you do kind of just look at these people as like, well, they're the athletes rather than the characters that we used to have in the Attitude Era.
No, hey, that's a fair point. And obviously, you know, kayfabe has truly been tucked away, taken out like Old Yeller in the corner, and, you know, blasted apart. It's got, obviously, with that lovely promo package they did for the Netflix debut of Raw, going around the history, but obviously using that terminology. You know, it's it's gone now. That's just the sad advancement of the business. But Triple H himself has been announced as the headliner for this year's Hall of Fame for the WWE. Congratulations, obviously, Mr. Triple H. But I want to know for yourself, Ryan, what does it mean to you to obviously finally see Triple H get a solo inductee into the Hall of Fame?
I mean, I think it's crazy considering like how long it's taken him. You know, like for him to be like considering how much involvement he's had from way back. What was his name before it was Hunter Hearst? You know, when he was like kind of the English gent almost type thing. It was almost kind of like borderline with William Regal's old initial character, and then he kind of became that kind of more DX kind of facing guy. But considering how long he's been in with the feuds he's been in, you know, him Stone Cold, him and The Rock, like in him and Shawn Michaels being incredible, then being at each other's throats, him and Vince, like he's, especially for someone who grew up with the Attitude Era, he was such a key role to that era. That obviously I think it's about time that he's been inducted.
Yeah, he's finally in there and he's going to headline. But obviously, you know, what's a Hall of Fame class without other people within that class? And, you know, some speculation's gone of people, I think this person. And then someone says, oh, let's just put in The Rock there because I really want to see him do it again.
Yeah.
But Cam doing Sunshine. We're no on that point just yet. But, Ryan, is there any other names you would like to see go in the class this year alongside Triple H?
I couldn't. I'd have to think about that. I did see a post from Chris Jericho basically saying how he would deny. He'd basically like he'd do the kind of Guns N' Roses Axl thing of being like, no thanks, but thanks, which I think is quite a rock starry Chris Jericho thing to say.
Oh, you know, the people, you know, the champion, you know, the learning tree, Jericho. He likes his cruises. He'll run his own stuff. That's Jericho's motif. But obviously, we're gonna have to get into the main reason why we're here: Northern Championship Wrestling. So let's get into it, Ryan. Obviously, let's start with the origins of the company. What was it that made you decide to start up your own wrestling promotion?
So for NTW, the way it kind of came about, it was. I'm one of those people where I always have ideas constantly. You know, you come up with, oh, I'll do it. No, that's not going to work. Oh, I'll do this. And it was like a culmination of a load of things. Like my background is a large, like 3 decades dedicated to like martial arts and combat sports. That's like the main thing I do. I run a kickboxing gym and I coach fighters and stuff. I was a fighter myself. Got injured from a long-term injury that just went, and it basically became like, do I keep fighting? The next fight's potentially the last time I walk, or do I kind of focus on the business where I can continue to do what I'm doing and stay healthy? So that was a smarter thing. And I've kind of always been involved in like running events. Like I spent a decade as a breakdancer as well, working professionally in theaters, touring the UK. We did Glastonbury a few times. We went over to Europe and did a few shows and stuff. So I've got like a theater background with a gymnastics background with a martial arts background. And then I used to run events for like, so we used to run like breaking events, like kind of small venue hip hop events, club nights and stuff like that. And then I started recently, because I'll always hold my hands up and say like, I've not really through the years kind of noticed the local scene. I've not really been massively involved in it. It was only the back end of last year we started going to more local shows, seeing what was out there. And it was kind of being inspired and seeing what other people were doing. And then with my background, it was kind of like being a promoter and running a company and the storytelling and the characters and stuff. I was like, it's everything that I enjoy doing, everything that I love, a lot of stuff that I've got experience all rolled into one. And it's that saying, and I hate the saying as well, because it's not always true. But so that whole thing of, you know, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. And you know full well that some days it just feels like even worse work, but you do it because you love it. You've got passion for it. So it's one of those things where it was just involving everything that I love doing. And I was like, this is something that I can do without needing loads of people. Like from the gym experience, I do all our own filming, editing, all the graphics and stuff like that. So I was like, well, I could do all this for the company. I don't have to outsource it. And initially it was just supposed to be this kind of small little, just do like a little kind of DIY show. And then almost every day it was like, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was one of those things where it then became, So because I work with fighters, I don't know if you've heard of Cage Warriors before.
Slightly, yes,
So
slightly familiar.
Cage Wars is almost like the feeder for UFC. So I coach one of the guys that's on Cage Warriors, and his goal is to go to UFC. And then I was like production size wise and kind of what they do there. You know, Cage Wars is where like Conor McGregor, Meatball Molly, Paddy Pimblett all came from. So then it was a case of like, well, you know, it's a big goal, a big vision, but what if we could be big enough to then be the stepping stone for UK wrestlers to go to the next stage? You know, I'm not saying that has to be WWE, but it could be, you know, they've been seen on our stage, so they've been booked for a bigger show in Europe. You know, it's led more doors open for more UK wrestlers, basically, is like the goal.
It's a very valid goal. You know, you see it with a lot of UK wrestlers sometimes don't get that showcase, whether it's the scene they went to or it's just their town. There may be one promotion that runs a show every 2 months or something like that, or even longer than that. But to have that elevation platform, and even if it doesn't lead something, it's still that platform that's available for them. And that's obviously with the modernization of social media, is everything so wide dispersed. So obviously for, you know, Northern Championship, I know on the Instagram page you would stay out this quote that 2025 is going to be huge for NCW. We might be a new promotion, but this isn't our first rodeo. We're here to compete, we're here to be the best, and we're here to put on the best UK wrestling shows with the best talent possible. And essentially British talent, there is so much of it from up and down the coast that it's thriving of that. And you know, when I started all this, I was always bit like, oh, having to ask wrestlers for an interview and hitting their DMs, you don't know what you're going to get back. You might get a scene or nothing. But for yourself, and obviously you've built quite a collection of names for NCW. What was it like going out and actually getting the talent for the company?
So in terms of like how I looked at the roster, so again, for me, like the biggest inspiration for NCW, and you know, whether or not people can then go, oh, well, you're just trying to copy it, is the big inspiration is to bring back that kind of attitude era of the WWF and have that old WCW, ECW kind of vibes brought back into, like, not saying big size shows, but those mid-sized good production shows, you know. And I said it to someone the other day, I said, you know, Progress started somewhere, Rev Pro started somewhere, and look where those guys are. You know, who's to say we couldn't be there in the next few years? And then who's to say we can't take it and make it even bigger? But in terms of the roster, it kind of came back to, again, looking at the Attitude Era and kind of looking at who was doing what these days. So being new to the scene, I kind of had like a fresh eyes on everybody. So like, it's not like I've been following people for years. Initially, a lot of people contacted us and reached out, and I think that was purely just through the promotional content we were putting out that people kind of realized there was a little bit more maybe work and effort going in behind the scenes. Like one of the comments we got was how active we are on social media, like how much content we put out, how much we're trying to kind of promote the guys. So when it came to roster, it was kind of finding who's got good wrestling ability and what is their personality and their character like. Because I'm a big believer in character work equals good stories as well. So like you look at the Attitude Era and the kind of characters you had back then, like Kane, Goldust, Mankind, all these guys, they all had something to them that made them them. So that was kind of something that we're looking for, is like trying to find the wrestlers who can, you know, like, and I've said this to somebody before, like I use Alton Thorne as kind of like an example. If you look at his promos that he did for the post and pre-match, they were one takes, just done like that. And it was like the ability to do that is what we're looking for. We want guys that when they give that promo as a fan, you're like, holy shit, this guy wants to hurt this person. This guy means what they're saying. So it's like kind of ticking all those boxes and trying to find the right people to put that kind of show together that's going to give that kind of old school era of what wrestling is, to try and then take it to the next level.
Yeah, Alton, I've had my run-ins with him in the past, and you know, he's a grabby guy. He's a grabby guy, but you know, I'm changing my mindset on him at the moment, or however I feel about that. But digressing on that point, obviously, NCW, you've built up quite a big thing going on right at the moment. Obviously, main thing right now, you've got a hardcore champion in BA Rose. Beautiful looking belt as well. I'd love to know the story of making the championships. Obviously, I've had companies on before, and usually it's like a long-term process of how many belts they want, what they're wanting to get, and the designs, obviously. So I want to know the stories of obviously creating the NCW championships.
Yeah. So that kind of came into, again, it was like, oh, we'll do one or two, and now it's kind of built into. We've got more planned as well, but again, we didn't want to come out and be like, here's 12 belts, because I feel like that's something that kind of rubs me the wrong way about WWE now, about how many different belts there were. Whereas back in the day, you had your Intercontinental, European, Hardcore, Tag, and like your World Championship. That was it. And now it's like there's too many belts. So we're trying to keep it kind of narrow. But in terms of like the Hardcore, that one's actually quite funny how we did it, because I actually had no idea how we were going to get like a Hardcore belt, where we were going to get one made. And the one that we ended up using was initially the Women's Championship belt, but when I got it, it didn't impress me. So 48 hours before the match, I'm in the gym with like sanding tools, spray paint, duct tape, and I basically was just like, well, we'll customize this and we'll see how it turns out. And luckily, it turned out pretty sick. But that was kind of just custom made and like, okay, we need to get this belt together. I had a kind of vision in my head of how I thought it should look, and I did the best I could to kind of make it that way.
Hey, it's actually pretty impressive. I like it. I think it's pretty good. Get some replicas. It'll be a nice addition to the studio here. I'm just saying. But obviously as well, something that's impressive as well you came out is obviously the merch for NCW, because I know you've got like trading cards as well coming out.
Yeah, so we've got trading cards coming, which the plan is to then have every person who's on our roster have a trading card. So as myself, I'm a bit of a nerd. So like I've still got large collection of Pokemon cards. I collect baseball cards as a Yankees fan. And it's just something I've always done as a kid. And it was like, I always thought how cool it would be like to be a fighter or to be whatever and have your own trading card. I was like, that's cool. And then I was like, well, why don't we just do them? Like we've got some good guys. We've got an incredible media team. Like one of our photographers who does all the Street Brawl Arena stuff, like he's just incredible. Like if you've seen the Street Brawl Arena, if you saw the BA Rose and Keg Stacker pictures, that was his first time ever shooting wrestling. And he's like, showing me the pictures. He's going, yeah, I think I got some all right ones. Like, I think this one might be good. And I'm like, those are some of the best wrestling shots I've ever seen. And he's like, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess they're all right. So he does like all our media stuff. And basically, whenever we work with our talent, we always sort of photo shoot as well before any match and stuff. So then we've kind of got like NCW exclusive images we can use. So they'll all be used for the trading cards to the point. So hopefully by like summer, there's trading cards of everybody that's on the roster, as well as like variants and different stuff to collect.
Oh, you're making the collective community salivate with that. Variants? Oh my.
Well, would you like an exclusive?
Oh, exclusive. You're treating me too good, Ryan. You're treating me too good, but I'll take it. I do like an exclusive.
Okay. So one of the things that we're doing, and it'll probably go live by the end of the year, is every Street Brawl Arena match and every Hardcore match, we're going to take one weapon that's been used in it, and it'll be signed by the guys that did the match. And then we're going to sell them off at the end of the year to raise money for charity.
Oh, hey, great thing, going for a great cause and a great piece of memorabilia for fans to own. Yeah. I love that. That is perfect right there. NCW obviously is going to be doing some shows this year. You're going to be doing multiple, but the first one coming up is NCW Volume 1 Anarchy.
Yes.
Are all the shows going to be called volumes? Is this sort of like what Progress do with chapters, or is it just for the first show?
So this is mostly just for the Anarchy. So the idea of the Anarchy volumes they're kind of, initially it was supposed to be a bit of a smaller DIY show. So unfortunately, it turns out that Leeds venues do not appreciate pro wrestling. So we spoke to, and this isn't like an over exaggeration, we spoke to about 15 venues, majority of which just ignored us. And once we got the third, fourth, fifth phone call or email in, they would then say it's against their venue policy that they couldn't host pro wrestling. And then other ones were just upfront and honest and be like, nah, we've had bad experiences before. So we kind of had the door shut on us straight away. And it was a bit like, oh shit, great. Our city doesn't actually want us to host it here. But also we have some great local shows as well. So we're like, well, there's got to be venues out there. And it just so happened that we found the Carriage Works Theatre, who were really open-minded about it. It just so happened that the venue director there was actually at WWE in Sheffield with her kids when I was there as well. So she understood more kind of what pro wrestling was, and that it could be, you know, it wasn't this big scary event that for some reason people had in their head. But Anarchy was supposed to just be a small DIY show in a smaller venue. And then we were like, okay, we can't find a smaller venue that will let us have it. So we're going to have to move the show to what we were calling the main event, which is like our 4 big events through the year. We're all supposed to be the carriage work. So then we were like, well, spoke to all the talent, and I was like, well, here's the deal. It's like, we either have to cancel this show, and I hate letting people down or having to pull things, or I said, or can take a bit of risk and just throw everything we got to this and see what we can do. So we went for it. But the plan is that the Anarchy shows will be kind of like street brawl influenced, a little bit more stipulation matches. Like obviously we've got a ladder match, we've got a table match, we've got the 2-on-2 hardcore, the regular hardcore, but then we've got some like regular singles matches in between as well, just to change it up a little bit.
Hey, got to go all in sometimes, and hopefully it'll be a rewarding experience, because it does look like an impressive card. Now, when I saw obviously the cards being announced for this, there was one that caught my eye particular. The Harrods versus the Powers That Be, the 2 versus 2 hardcore titles. Now, I had Franco Fate on the show, and we talked about that, and Frank was like, 2 versus 2 hardcore titles. I'm interested, but it sounds something unique. Because obviously, for the record, these aren't tag titles.
No. So all 4 men will start in the ring at the same time, and either person from either team can pin or submit the other person. So I guess there's a little bit of strategy that has to go into it as well, because you're always going to have somebody else roundabout unless you're working together as a team.
I see. Well, hey, that adds in some uniqueness about them. I mean, obviously the belts haven't been revealed as of yet. I'm sure they'll be revealed at the show or prior to social media. Was there a particular mindset for the design, sort of like what you've got with the hardcore title, or something new?
So, yeah, they're a little bit kind of similar along the lines to the main world title that we have for the hardcore division, but they've just got a little bit different tweaks and a little bit different look to them and stuff. But they'll be cool. They'll be cool.
I see. Obviously, we don't know what other titles could be added in at this point, but something I've noticed as well from a lot of the wrestlers that I've spoken to, especially within Scotland, they miss like the British style, World of Sports, or even the Ring of Honor pure style, which we see with, you know, the likes of Nigel McGuinness and Lee Moriarty. Do you think there could be ever a place in NCW for a pure style belt?
Possibly. It's not something that I'd say, like, I'm always open to ideas. I'm always looking for feedback. Like, as I said to all the talent when I work with them, if you have ideas for your character, or you have ideas for a story or a match, talk to me, because, I like to think I'm very creative myself, but it's always good to have outside stuff. And I'm not somebody who's going to drop the fist and be like, absolutely not, that's nonsense. It's, if you've got an idea and I've got an idea, let's try and work this out. And then everybody's happy and everybody gets the best out of what they're doing. So it's like, I'll never say no to stuff. There's always, there's room to change, room to evolve, room to play with things. And especially being so young now, I think there's so many avenues we could kind of look at and things that we could implement as we go.
Hey, you never know, the ceiling is as high as the sky. You can add anything you want, as long as it works. That's the main thing. Now, of course, right before we went live, obviously for doing it, well, obviously not live, our pre-recorded interview right here at the moment, I put out on our Soul Sessions Instagram page some questions from the fans. We have a couple. This is surprising. I actually have people giving me questions. This is the
actually
first
care.
Yes, I know. Oh my God, people watch. I'm so dedicated. My seeds of labor have paid off. But we actually asking questions. It's weird. It's crazy. But hey, first off, we've got Holtz Powell Gibbs on Instagram. They've asked, can fans coming to the Anarchy show expect the same level of violence as Bleeding Gums Wrestling? And obviously, for full transparency as well, I work for Bleeding Gums as well. We obviously have our shows and all that, but they are obviously very much 18 plus deathmatch. Yeah. I know Anarchy is 14 plus. So for fans wondering, will it be on this level of style of death matches or a bit lower down?
Yep. So in terms of that, I think there was a little bit of a gray area when we first launched, because I think people got confused over, they thought we were a death match promotion or purely hardcore promotion. So a quick little story to kind of fill that in is also we had the idea kind of back end of November to be like, oh, we could do this. And then the venue didn't have anything available till May. So I was like, okay, that's like 5 months. We can't just keep going. We have a show coming. Guys, we've got a show coming. So I was like, we need something to kind of put out, start promoting ourselves, build a little bit of the name before we launch the initial show. And that's where we started with the Street Brawl stuff. And I think everybody kind of was like, oh, they're just a hardcore promotion. You know, there was guys I contacted and offered matches and they were like, no, it's not my thing. And I was like, no, it's not hardcore. It's not deathmatch. So I think once this show's done and we have more of the other stuff we do, people will see. But in terms of the violent stuff, I try and say as much as I can, we're not a deathmatch company because there's just so many companies out there that absolutely kill it. And it's like, we don't need to be doing it because there's already companies that absolutely kill it. So we were trying to do something a little bit different. So we're trying to kind of take that attitude, hardcore era kind of vibe to it. But it will be chaos. I think there's maybe a twist over like the more blood equals the more chaos. But then I think about Dudley Boys versus the Hardys versus Edge and Christian TLC. That shit was mental. And they didn't have to draw blood on it. So it's like, I'm not saying there's not going to be. I'm not saying there's going to be loads. But from what I've seen on Bleeding Gums, it looks crazy. But like, it's a different crazy to like what our shows will be, if that makes sense. So different levels of craziness, but expect some cool shit.
You'll get some cool shit indeed. And yeah, Bleeding Gums, you can walk in there and get stapled in the tie by a wrestler and then walk away. Yeah, I've really loved it. Yeah,
I definitely need to get to a show. I said to some of the guys as well, I said, because like we're trying to do, my partner and I who run it, we're trying to do as much as we can to get to as many shows as well. Because I feel like, especially coming from like the combat sports world, there's a very weird thing in it where it's like people don't want to support other people. It's kind of like, oh, you're from that gym, so I'm not gonna like be cool with you, or oh, you fought someone from my gym 3 years ago, and you beat them, so I'm not that sure about you. Whereas like, especially with the new guys on the scene, like we're trying to show that, you know, it's not a case of we're here to step on toes, but we want to support the scene, and we also just want to give the wrestlers that extra platform. You know, like I've said to people before, like it pisses me off the age of social media. You know, you see people kill promos, or you know, B.A. Rose doing that front flip off a loading bay into someone in a steel chair to get the belt, and it gets 42 likes, and you're like, so it's like just trying to build that. So the goal is to build our social media to the point where we're able to get the wrestlers in front of more eyes, to more people, to encourage them to come to more shows, and not just ours, but the scene in general.
Hey, professional wrestling can be a minefield sometimes, but we've got to diffuse those minds, and you know, we're all in it together at the end of the day as professional wrestling. And hey, if you come up to Bleeding Gums, I'll buy you a pint when I'm avoiding getting stabbed by Alton Thorne. So I'll do that part. Next question we have from is WWE_Rollins Messiah. I think they're Seth Rollins fans. I couldn't take the hint. And their question was, will NCW champions be able to defend their belts in other companies?
No. I think that is just because, so the way I'm looking at it, and some people might disagree with this, some people might agree with it. The way we're trying to look at NCW, other than the Alton and Tim altercation, because also they had their first match on Bleeding Gums, I think it was, wasn't it? Then in the Street Brawl. So that's kind of like a 1-1. So that's the only kind of thing that we're looking at outside of NCW. But the way we're trying to look at it is, this is like our little world, and there's nothing outside of it. So it's like we're not kind of looking at other promotions and going, okay, so they've matched them, so we'll bring them in to match them, or there's another storyline going on in another promotion that we're going to feed into ours. It's very much like we have a kind of plan and a vision of where each event's going, kind of where the characters are interacting, what rivalries and feuds, and how we're going to feed things in. And I think when you then start to push that out into the promotions, it can get a bit tricky to track. You know, like one of the things I'm trying to do the best we can online is to, in between the shows, continue to show parts of the story and little things that are happening with the wrestlers, opposed to, oh, well, here's the match, then there's nothing until the next promo, and then it's the match. So we're trying to just keep things going a little bit. We've got little surprises at shows, little things that will happen that people don't expect, yada yada. So yeah, so it's kind of like keeping it all in like the NCW world, if that makes sense.
No, hey, you know, sometimes storylines can be a bit blurred, or some people wondering, oh, is something going to happen because they appear with the belt on that show, and obviously it might not come to fruition because wrestling, it is what it is. But that's just the nature. But hey, fun times all around. And our final question is from Brits Rest at 222, and their final one is: Will some of the NCW belts be intergender?
Ooh, you know what? I have. So again, this is a personal opinion, and people disagree about this. The intergender matches, I'm a little bit half on, half on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things I always flash back to is that horrific scene where is it Stone Cold? Who else? Is it Stone Cold and Triple H? And they kick the crap out of Lita. And you're watching it and you're like, it doesn't quite sit right. But saying that, there's some incredibly talented women in the scene. So it's one of those where if someone was to wanted to step up to challenge somebody, like say somebody on the roster from the women's division was like, well, hey, I want to crack at the British title. We're not going to say no, but we're going to make sure it's going to work the right way. Do you know what I mean? But we are kind of looking at having we've got really stacked women's division at the moment with 8. We've got another potential 4 to announce over the next couple of months, depending on whether or not we can get hold of them. So it's kind of seeing how the women's division unfolds over the next couple of shows. The same with the men's belts and where they go. But I'll never say never to the potential crossover as, you know, if one of the guys holds the British title, it doesn't mean one of the women's can't challenge him.
Absolutely. You know, intergenders, it's always a touchy subject. Sometimes the wrestlers, they love to do it because they get the experience of wrestling men when they maybe face the same women on free shows before.
Well, that's the thing. There's not that many, is there? So it's like you do see a lot of the same women over and over. We have looked at things. I'm not going to say too much, but there is a bit of an intergender team thing happening at the Great British Brawl, and that's all I'll say.
Ooh! He's teasing with the exclusive now. He's being cheeky. I respect it. You got to keep some secrets. You know, that's just the way the thing works. But obviously, as well, with British wrestling in general, it is truly thriving. You know, I always say I'm maybe a Scotsman, but I think the Welsh scene is the best in the UK when you see with the likes of talent being produced there. Obviously, you've got a roster at the moment, but is there some maybe British wrestlers you have an eye on and think, I don't have a spot for you just yet, but I will love to get you into NCW?
There's some British wrestlers that need to reply to my messages first. So see when Anarchy's done and then Eruption's done, and then you start replying and being like, oh, sorry, I missed your message. And it's been 6 months. It's very obvious. So if I've sent you a message and you've just watched the request and you want to be on the show, get back to me. But I don't know. I think I'm always looking for kind of who's out there, because I just think, and I think as well, it's difficult to judge kind of how certain people be. Like, you know, someone could send a match on probably like the smallest show you've ever seen with 5 people there, and it's like you kind of look at it sometimes and go, okay, but what if we put you on a bigger ring and a bigger production with more people and gave you somebody better to wrestle? That might work out better for you. So it's like we're always kind of looking, seeing what's there. There's a couple of guys that I've got my eye on that I'm kind of looking at. There's a couple of people that we're waiting to hear back from, kind of AEW, TNA type people, but that's as much as I can say. And then in terms of not having on the roster but having guests, there's a bunch of people we've reached out to. I'm trying to think, how can I say it? There's a bunch of people reached out to that's like potentially end of year, like potential big appearances. But I don't want to promise too much and then something happens. But there are some bigger old school like WWF guys we're looking at trying to come here, come do an appearance, come do this. So who knows? We'll kind of just need to wait and see how this year goes, but very exciting.
No, of course I get that. Like I don't like to advertise my interviews before they happen because I don't want to disappoint viewers who are maybe like hyped for somebody coming on, and then whether it's tech issues or they're busy or something happens, you're just like, well, fuck, I've kind of screwed over my audience and made a
there we go.
I don't want to be like that, but I can fully understand that. But obviously as well, NCW's got Eruption 16th of May, Fallout 16th of August, and the Great British Brawl on the 18th of October. And then as well, Worlds Collide at a further date as well. You guys are going to be really busy. You are going to be very, very packed. For setting out the schedule, how important do you think it is as a wrestling company to set out the schedule this so far advanced for fans?
Big time. I think as well with the amount of promotions there are these days as well. That was maybe something that we overlooked ever so slightly. But I think it's one of those things, there's fans everywhere. So like one of the things that was a big inspiration for us is when we went to Sheffield, as I said, for WWE, and it was like, shit, look how many people are here. And it was like, okay, how do we get the smaller shows in front of these people? Because there's wrestling fans out there and there's great shows out there, but they're just not seeing them. It's taken me ages to realize there was a thriving local scene. And, someone told me 10 years ago that there were schools I could go learn and become a wrestler. I'd be like, damn, I wouldn't have started at 34. But it's just trying to get the product in front of the people that aren't seeing it and saying, look what's here. WWE is going to cost you this, but there's something that's a little bit smaller in production and it's a lot cheaper and it's just as good. You know what I mean? I think with the right people on the show, and I think with how the 4 big main shows will kind of reveal as we go through the year, it's like, if you have the right production, you have the right space, you have the right people, you can make something special. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think as well, in the modern age with the whole pricing thing, it's fucking absurd half the time. Like when I went down for AW All In weekend, I just as loved, Riot Cabaret and the Retro 12th anniversary and Progress. Like they were, to me, on the same caliber as All In. They might not have had the production, they might not have had the bigger stars, but they were just as fun for cheaper the price. And I loved it. Let's obviously get into the ticket situation, because obviously WWE are coming over for the WrestleMania tour. They've got a production in Glasgow at the Hydro, and it's like 300 quid for.
I went to buy tickets and then went, no. I made the mistake of going, I've not been to WWE since Insurrection. I was like, I'm going to buy floor seats. And I kid you not, the space between the chair and front was about this. And it just, I've been to some local shows and had more enjoyment watching that than I did sitting on the floor at WWE. And whether it's not coming from being like an older 90s, early 2000s fan and then comparing the new stuff. And obviously it was a house show as well, so nobody's really going all out. Like there was a steel cage match and you could see them climbing down the ropes to not take a bump off the cage. And you were like, you could have made that look cooler, and you kind of climbed your way down because you don't want to get hurt. But it was still, production-wise, it was awesome to see. Because then it kind of gives you that, well, here's the super crazy expensive, big, massive production at the highest end, and here's our indie shows. Okay, we're going to try and have NCW in that middle ground.
Hey, that's fair as well. Some people have obviously said, this is a negative on the business with WWE's ticket prices, but I like to view everything as an alternative angle. But do you think as well, Ryan, do you agree with this statement that with WWE's ticket prices being so high, it actually adds a benefit onto the indie scene because people will turn to that as the alternative from WWE for a cost-effective move, but also get as good as the show?
Yeah, well, I'd have to agree with that, because that's what we're hoping to do. NCW is going, hold on, we've got a show here full of, because our plan is we've been in talks with some European wrestlers as well, that we're looking to bring over for some shows, because obviously with so many promotions being on, so many wrestlers get booked. And if you're a fan that travels up and down like a lot of people do, you have a chance of seeing everybody everywhere kind of whenever you want, which is a great thing, because obviously back in the day you'd have to wait months probably to see your favorite wrestler, and now it's like you can almost see them every weekend somewhere if you don't mind traveling. So for WWE to bump up the prices, you know, like I thought the Netflix special was great, but one of my biggest gripes with it is 4 matches.
Yeah.
I was like, we've been sat here for 3 hours and we've seen 4 matches. So that's like a little niggle for me. But the pricing thing as well, like it's one of those things just get expensive and expensive. And as a promoter, you can understand having to charge those prices, because I don't think a lot of people fully understand the financial pressure of running a promotion, especially when you kind of take it out of like a social club, which is a more affordable venue. And then you have to look at lighting, you've got staffing costs, you've got promotional and marketing, blah, blah, blah. But I think it is a positive for the smaller promotions and the indie companies, because again, it's just getting us in front of those people to say, hey, look, we've got something just as good. You know what I mean? It might be smaller. We might not be as well-known wrestlers, but come give us a chance and guaranteed you're going to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't until I actually looked up the wrestling that was outside my very window that I appreciate it. You know, going to the Scottish scene and even seeing wrestlers I've had on this very show. Like I always say, the best thing I ever did for myself as a fan and this show was finding the wrestling outside my very window, because it is just as much talented. And I'm always appreciative of what British wrestlers, and also like yourself with the companies that provide places for these wrestlers to come and wrestle, gain knowledge, and just showcase their style. And that's always what we've got to appreciate with the stuff that you're doing at NCW. I'm sure it'll just be as great for the British wrestling scene as many others have been for. Now, obviously, as well, Ryan, we see with indie shows within the modern day of social media, people are allowed to record their shows and get their content out there. For NCW and their shows, are the full shows going to be taped? Will they go on YouTube or something like IWTV or Triller? Is that something in the plans for the company?
So 100%, we'd absolutely love to kind of work out some sort of streaming or TV-based thing to get NCW on, because I genuinely believe that, like, it's hard to say it and people to believe it when you haven't put the final product out there. But I genuinely believe that, like, what we're doing is something that you would want to see on TV. You know, our bringing you the best in British pro wrestling is factual for us. Like, we want to put on the best talent that we can possibly find. That, to me, kind of like, as I said, I'm always kind of referencing the Attitude Era of kind of looking at those people and being like, you know, could I see them on TV? You know, so I look at some of the guys in the roster like B.A. Rose, and I'm like, I could see you on TV doing what you're doing. You know, I can see there's some people we haven't worked with that we're really hoping to work with. You know, love him or hate him, Nathan Black. His character ability as a comedian, where you love him or hate him, he's absolutely brilliant. And it's, you know, people like that just, same as when I reference Alton Thorne, like his ability to cut promos like that, and you fully believe every word they're saying. And it's like, those are the guys we want to work with. And I think when you get those people and you put them all in the same room, I think that's when things are really special and things can really happen. And you get everybody believing in the same goal of, like, you know, because at the end of the day, it's my name and the company's name, but you're the one in the ring. And I always say to guys, it's like, you know, I want to be able to give you the ability to, one, have the most fun you can doing it, and two, be proud of what you've done in there and come away from the ring being like, fuck yeah, like that was sick. Because if you do that, then you know the fans are going home going, Jesus Christ, that was a good show. Because essentially that's what it is. And it's we're there to entertain. We're there to make them go home, whether or not they're going home going, Jesus Christ, that was a bit much, or they're going, was blown away by that, or, you know, it just encourages, you know, somebody brought their dad who's like, oh, this shit's fake and blah, blah, blah. And then they see someone do a moonsault off a 20-foot ladder and they're like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to go start watching wrestling now on Netflix. And there's another fan, and he's then bringing his family to the family shows and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's just that little chain reaction that we need to get.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, some people will say, you know, wrestling has to be protected and stuff like that. But if you don't make new fans, then when the fans that eventually, you know, lose interest or don't start working anymore, then there's no one new to replace the people that leaves. And with promotions like yourselves, always bringing in people that may not have Netflix or may not know what wrestling is, and replenishes the cycle. So it's obviously integral what you guys are going to be a part of that scene. And I'm truly truly excited to see what you guys build within the British wrestling scene. Now, obviously, Ryan, we're coming to the end of our time here, so a couple of wrap-up questions from you, my friend. Obviously, we talked about titles, and we've talked about, maybe a pure title, maybe that. But is there any particular title you look at and think, I don't want that? Like a trios, or I've seen in Japan, they have a 10-man title, so we're not going to have any of that, no?
No. Yeah, none of that. Stuff that keeps it simple. I was gonna give just another random exclusive. So there is potentially another event that NCW are going to be doing alongside the Street Brawl Arena. It's something that we're possibly going to announce in the next few weeks. It's just mental. I think it's probably a little bit more mental. Basically, it's for all the people, because we had loads of people wanting to come to the Street Brawl matches, but unfortunately they weren't ticketed events and we couldn't have audience and stuff there due to a closed filming set. But this is now potentially a route in which people can actually come watch the Street Brawl style matches. But hopefully we'll be able to announce something in the next couple of weeks to that. But there might be an extra title in there. Other than that, the only other title I think we'd have would be probably a European title. And I think the way we would do that is there would never be a British versus a British for the European title. We'd always bring in a European to face a Brit.
That's good. Keep it with the stipulations of titles is always a good thing to have because it adds in that extra element to the title and could add to storylines as well. And obviously your street brawls are pretty great as well. And the UK is known for a lot of great, cities, and we have our great architecture. If you could travel to a particular British city for a street brawl fight, which one would it be and why?
Ooh. That's a hard question.
Oh, come on. You don't want to come to Glasgow and on a Saturday night someone gets a chippy thrown at them?
I feel like too many people get involved. Someone would get stabbed and it would be chaos. And I don't know. It'd have to be... Do you know what? I'd actually love to just take it to somewhere completely opposite to a street. Like, just take them up to like the coolest, like scenic Highland views and just give them a log each and be like, batter each other. See how it goes.
Hey, why not get a couple of conkers? Just have a conkers match. Whoever breaks everyone's conkers becomes champion. You can allow the creativity of the British style because that's it at the end of the day. It's uniqueness and creativity. Now, Ryan, honestly, it's been a pleasure to have you on and talk about NCW. So we'll wrap it up here with the last final question, my friend.
Yes,
for viewers that are watching, whether they're British or international, whether it's wrestlers, British or international, what is it that you feel with NCW that can provide to wrestling as a whole that should grab people's attention to come to these shows?
Ooh, I think that if you're looking for that, like, have you seen the venue at all? Have you seen any of the sneak peeks I've put out?
I like to go in blind. I don't like sometimes the sneak peeks, but...
Well, it's going to give you... We already had some of the talent respond to it and be like, oh my God, that's old Raw vibes already with the venue we have. So it's, if you want to feel that kind of nostalgia, that kind of heyday of the Attitude Era, you want to come see chaos matches you've never seen. So that's one of the biggest things is us trying to keep it fresh. 6 out of the 8 matches, the guys have never faced each other. So that's something that we're constantly trying to do, is keeping it fresh and trying to put the best matches we possibly can on for you with the best production we can give you, so that you go home satisfied going, damn, that was money well spent and it was entertaining at the end of the day.
We all have to be entertained, and whether it's through professionalism or a good old fight, sometimes we all just need a little bit of anarchy, and that's where the fun lies. But hey, folks, NCW, it's a great looking company. Obviously, we've got Anarchy Volume 1 on Friday, the 21st of February in Leeds. Our tickets available on Eventbrite, if I'm correct.
Eventbrite, yes, sir.
Eventbrite is indeed how you can get your tickets as well. Obviously, we've got the multiple other shows from Eruption, Fallout, Great British Brawl, all going on there. And of course, folks, as I do with every guest, and we'll put a link to NCW's Instagram down below. Follow the company, see what they provide, and obviously Eventbrite as well for tickets. Well, folks, as a Scotsman, I say Finish up your pints and put your chairs away. And thank you as always for tuning in for another episode of the Soul Sessions.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure, my friend.
Now